og der lå aske overalt. Men det var en anden type aske. Den var ikke skadelig, den der aske der. Så Icelanderne, de lå...
Good afternoon, and welcome to this session on the new airport and infrastructure in Greenland. My name is Thomas Tyt Mogensen, and I run a little consulting company called Tyt Consulting, and I have the honor of leading this panel today and this debate today. So let me start out by introducing our speakers. We have Karl Knudsen, who's a project director at Kalatlit Airport. We have Jakob Nieder Sørensen, who is the CEO of Air Greenland. And then we have Christian Kelsen, who is the CEO of Greenland Business Association. And we're going to do it with a short presentation from each of them. And then I'm going to ask them a couple of questions and have a little debate about that. And then I'll open up for questions from all of you guys, and I will also ask you if this is one of the questions that we should bring forward to the panel with the mayors from all the municipalities later this afternoon. So with no further ado, let's get started, Avia, with your short presentation.
Thank you, Thomas. First of all, I want to thank GE for this opportunity and this great conference. So my name is Jakob Knudsen, and I'm the project director of Kalatlit Airports. We are a publicly owned company founded in 2016 to build, own, and operate these new airports in Nuuk, Ilulissat, and Qaqortoq. And as you guys probably noticed when you flew here, or if you live here on a daily basis, we're quite far along with the construction work here in Nuuk and Ilulissat. And we're also very pleased that we can now start the construction work in Qaqortoq this summer. So according to our timetable and the plans, we are going to go operational with the new airports in Nuuk and Ilulissat by the end of 2024. And Qaqortoq is due in 2025 to go operational. So, but I think this morning was just spectacular. All the presentations and discussion and debates. It's what we're all about when we get to the operating part of Kalatlit Airports, because we're going to run these airports on a commercial basis, and therefore we need passengers. But that's not going to happen by itself. The airport is mainly a tool. We have to come together here and make a common strategy here in Greenland if we want to make this happen. So I'm very much looking forward for this discussion this afternoon. I hope you have some good questions, and if you don't, I know that Thomas has. So, but it's very important because the success in Kalatlit Airports is of course going to be more passengers, but that's not going to happen by itself. We're just a small piece of the puzzle. So we have to work together here, and it's so good to see this morning that all the important players from the different sectors, tourism and aviation, and the government also, Naalakkersuisut is also present here today. Everybody's talking about the right thing. Now we just have to make it happen. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Avia. Jakob?
Yes, thank you. I did have this great 45-page slideshow prepared, but we skipped that. No. Yeah, thank you also for this opportunity. I've been in aviation since 1996 in various positions, and every week, every day of this business is what we call exciting. It's always exciting times. It can't be any more exciting than now, but now it is actually very exciting. The current airport in Nuuk was built and opened in 1979. When it was planned and projected back in the 70s, the plan was that the airport was to be further extended by 1986. I mean, there were progressive people back then who planned these airports. Now it's 2024. It's long due, and we're very much looking forward to it. But as Aviaya says, the airport is just a tool. The airline is just a tool. It's what's at the other end. That's why people travel, be it visiting friends or families, or for medical reasons, or for leisure purposes, or exploration, or whatever. So really, we're just tools for the end mean, which is the growth and the prosperity of the country. So. I'm also looking forward to the debate, because in Greenland we are 56,000 people. 55,995 are experts on aviation. The remaining 5, that's the management of Greenland, because none of the rest of the people think that we know anything. So I'm looking forward to getting a lot of good inputs here from all the aviation experts. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Christian?
Yes, and I'm going to reuse my joke from yesterday and also thank the GBA for inviting me to the panel. I did well there. No, yeah, I'm here on behalf of the Greenland Business Association, and for those of you who may not be familiar with us, we are an industry organization, and we organize 10 different industries, all sorts of different industries, including the travel, tourism, different kinds of trade, the fisheries, all the industries that are relevant to driving a demand which is required to actually prosper from these new airports that we are putting in. And by saying this, I'd like to say we should not focus solely on the tourists. We should also look at the other things enabled by better infrastructure, a better connectivity. When we travel around the country talking about the airport, talking about the options, I often get the question that goes something along the lines of, in a moment we're going to have these new airports and the tourists and people are just going to be flooding in. Are you ready to receive? Have you got your hotels? Have you got your experiences? Have you got the trips and tours ready? And I like to put it like this, and I think that should be a very good starting point for our discussion here. New airports, yeah, great, but that's not going to change anything unless we can actually drive the demand. So we need to build the experiences, we need to build the businesses, the accommodation, all the things that would make people interested in Greenland. And if we do that, then these airports will come into play and the airlines will come into play, because then the passengers will start coming in. But just thinking that building an airport is going to do it and they'll just sit back and wait, and once they're here, we'll start building a hotel once we see what they may require. So we have a very important task of actually driving the demand. What we're also seeing in Greenland is often this will fall upon the public system. Huge conferences made, and we'll have the government and the municipalities come out and say, we're going to provide this information, what are you going to do, what are you going to do, and what are you going to do? And what we often see is the industry will sit at these conferences and they'll look to the government and say, oh, all good, what we want from you, Mr. and Mrs. Government, Mr. and Mrs. Municipality, is this, this, and that. So from our perspective, we're trying to drive some interest in investing in tourism, in whatever business will drive demand that is not dependent upon the government. And together with the Bank of Greenland, we have secured quite a big sum of money, and we will be, over the next 2 years, traveling around Greenland, trying to bring different businesses together. Because we have another problem in Greenland. Nobody is unemployed. And we need to move people into tourism. We may have to move people out of whatever they're doing today, either full-time or part-time. Just like the story we had from the Faroe Islands, we have to bring people out of sheep farming. Here we have to bring people out of other types of business. There could be carpenters who will perhaps have a bed and breakfast on the side, or do some dog sledding in their spare time, and then build tourism around that. And to give you an example, yesterday we went out with a lot of the speakers from the conference. We went out with the new water taxi. And I remember Ilulissat Water Taxi, which was the original company, was one boat, one small targa up in Ilulissat in the Disco Bay area. And yesterday we had 5 boats next to each other in the fjord, lovely weather, +6 degrees, champagne, 5 boats together, and the whales swimming around. Exaggerating a bit, but they were there. And I get up on deck and I do this speech and I say, what happened here? What happened was somebody started one boat on the side of whatever job they were doing, and they challenged the way we were doing business when it came to tourism. They changed the concept of how to sell and distribute the product of bringing tourists into the fjord, and now they have 5 boats, from 1 boat to 5 boats in a matter of years. It's a good story. Bottom line being, the people that did this were not brought up in tourism. It was a school teacher, and later on a person from retail. And we need to look at how can we bring people into tourism and other activities that will drive demand.
Thank you. So how do you look at this, Jacob, from a perspective that all these things he's talking about? You are a public-owned company, the same with Aviaria. How are you driving to get this structure and all this infrastructure that has behind the airport that has to be there? And how do you work with the companies to try to understand that you cannot sell tickets unless there's a service behind it and a demand for it behind it?
Yeah, I think until now we've been seeing sort of normal organic growth, and like Christian says, 1 boat becomes 5 boats, and now we see a new hotel in Ilulissat, which is great. Then you see some Airbnb, then there's a hostel popping up. But I think the situation that we're facing now is one which requires that all of us in Greenland take on the responsibility, because it's such a huge investment and it's such a huge increase in potential capacity that we have to sort of speed things up a little bit more. We need to scale it to build on what the entrepreneur presentation said. We need to scale it now, and in order to do that, we have to work much closer together, like Christian was saying, both to make sure that the infrastructure is actually following, but also to control which segments we appeal to, so that we work together. We work closely with Glacier Airports and Visit Greenland, and we're very much in agreement on which type of tourists do we want to target. But if we all go and target different segments, and it's going to be a mess, to be honest. So that's one thing. This big investment it has huge potential for the whole country if we get it right, but it will be a burden for our children if we get it wrong. And that's why we're in this boat together, basically. And I think that's what we're working with now. We can do some things in Air Greenland, but we can't do everything, and we shall not do everything, because then these 2 liberal guys will come and chase us, you know. But I think that we have a responsibility to be kind of fødselshjælper in English, but sort of help build things up, and then we can maybe sell it off when it's running. But I think we have an obligation to do that actually in Air Greenland, because we have the size. If we're not doing it, it's going to be investors from other countries. That's fine too. But I think the mix is probably the right way to do it. But what we're seeing right now is, just to be very specific on the issues or the challenges. Ilulissat, I said it earlier, you cannot get a hotel room for 2022. So, and this is without the new airport. I think, Aviaria, you can say a little bit about your calculations on how much capacity 1 aircraft twice a week requires?
Yeah, so I could just add to Jacob's speech. So of course in Galassi airports, we're going to go operational with these 2 new airports in Nuuk and Ilulissat in just 2 years. And we're making a lot of preparations, and we're traveling the world, and we're talking to Jacob's future competition, because there is going to be other operators on the new airport, and there's a huge interest out there, but they're all asking the same questions. And these questions are not minded on the technicalities of the airport. They're mostly minded on the infrastructure behind the airports. Will Greenland be able to receive these extra passengers? If we get 1 narrow body once a week with 200 passengers and they stay for 5 days, we need 1,000 hotel beds or stay-over possibilities. And these 1,000 rooms, they need to be serviced by someone. And as Jacob said, in Ilulissat, we already peaked. I mean, there's no There's no extra capacity as it is. So we really have to do this together. And what we spend a lot of time on in Galassi Airports, actually, where we're building up also a commercial department, is that we participate in many things here in Greenland to raise awareness about this. The debate, we talk with the metropolitans, we have to develop, but not only the cities where we're building the airports. As Jacob talked about in his presentation, and Visit Greenland, and I think we also heard it from Visit Faroe Islands, we have to engage all of Greenland in this. We have to, for Ilulissat, it's not just Ilulissat, it's all of the Disco Bay area that has to be engaged in this. So these new airports are for all of Greenland, and the business opportunities that comes along with it, we have to develop them together, because otherwise we're never going to get the number of passengers to Greenland that I think that we wish on. And when we see the growth rates that Atlantic Airways presented with 10% growth rates at the Faroe Islands, those are not even numbers closely that we're operating within now in Galassi Airports. We're hoping for this, but for this we need all of Greenland to come together and prepare before we can see numbers like that.
So, Christian, how do we get your members to work with this issue? Because as I know, most of them, as you said yourself, are at full scale of deployment. They are pretty busy already with building houses or already running the tour operator boat there is there, all the hotels they have. Are they ready? And how do we get them ready to actually be able to benefit from these airports?
One of the approaches we're taking is trying to set up partnerships, to bring people together at these industry events that we're trying to set up. Bring people from different businesses together, and hopefully new constellations will arise from this. And obviously, everybody knows everybody, but we've still had, in my previous job, we had the experience of bringing companies together that, even though they knew they existed, just bring them together in the same room, working on a concept of tourism. Ideas arose from that. And I think that's the philosophy of the approach we're going to take. Sort of see what can come out of something completely different by bringing people together. It's all a matter of inspiration, but also the fact that none of us can lift anything alone. We need to be stronger. We can be stronger together through the partnerships. Take the hotel in Ilulissat we're talking about, where it's funded by people from the fishing industry. It's built by people that, I don't know what to call the business, but it's a business of a bit of everything. But they weren't in tourism, and now they run a hotel. And that's the story of Greenland, more or less. People building something that they weren't meant to do to begin with. That's one part of it. Also, we should not be scared of foreign investments. Professionals coming in, ready to invest with their concepts, companies with a distribution line that can sell the products that they're setting up, somebody who are present in the whole value chain. Because on top of that as well, we can be suppliers and we can benefit from that. And I'd also just like to touch upon the point with the catchment areas. There's sort of an unwritten truth to the story that if we're not getting an airport, we're not going to be part of tourism or the development. But if you come from the outside world and you want to go to Denmark and you've decided that Odense on the island of Funen is my destination, and you look it up and you see, well, there's no airport anymore. Hence, I can't go to Odense, but that's not true. You can still fly to Copenhagen and then transfer yourself to Odense in a matter of an hour and a half by train. You can rent a car and it takes a couple of hours. We need to start that sort of thinking as well, so that we do the investments in Maniitsoq, Vammaut, Sisimiut and Aasiaat, those destinations close to the airport, and then ensure that we're also marketing the options of transferring from the new airport. Because to be honest, it's just an airport. Sisimiut is still a lovely destination. Kangerlussuaq is going to be a destination now. It's going to be a place we travel to rather than a place we travel through and stop over. So we need to start working on that, and that requires investments and foresight in these destinations too. And we need to be able to talk about that politically and in industry.
Okay, that leads me to my next question, because now all of you have been talking mostly about tourism. Are there other business opportunities? Were there other things that we could combine with this, or maybe make it easier to actually get ready for that? Other industries combined with the airport?
Yeah, of course, it's always a mixture of different types of passengers, and sometimes you get amazed when a route opens, who actually travels on that route and who uses it, and of course with increased connectivity you'll see increased business travel for many different purposes, be it salespeople or government, or of course there's the mineral exploration sector. I think most of the exploration companies and mining companies, they would like to see a route going west, somewhere close to St. John's or Toronto or something like that, you know. Then there's also the possibility of export of fresh fish, which is something that the Faroe Islands and Iceland are having huge success with. And that would be to the benefit of everyone here. You can basically catch the same product but sell it at a higher value. So of course the airport opens up that kind of possibility as well. We fly a lot of cargo into Greenland, but not a lot of cargo the other way. So we have spare cargo capacity going out of Greenland, and that could be used for export, not just fish, other things, I don't know. But it opens new possibilities, and I think it's always amazing to see. You can sit and you can plan and you can try to think and imagine what's going to happen, but once you push a button, the reality usually exceeds the imagination. And I think it's very positive to see what is going on out at in the regions. The area is very, very active in building the blocks for the future. We were in Asiat a couple of weeks ago. Lots of good ideas up there, the right thinking. So I'm very positive. And maybe we won't be ready from day one, but I think there's so many good operators out there, so many people thinking the right things, wanting to do it. But I think what Christian was talking about, we need to bring all of these great minds together in some sort of formalized or structured partnership to build on each other's thoughts and experiences.
So before we give the questions over to all these nice people out here,
the experts.
The experts. I do have one question on this public-private relationships. What are some of the obstacles and how are the advantages that you see and you meet in your daily life, when you're working with these municipalities, and also how do we get the other municipalities involved in this? Because it's apparent to me that all 5 municipalities has to be a part of this.
Absolutely, I agree, and I think it's just important to say here that again, from Galassi Airports, we are not going to drive this process. We're going to participate in it, and we're building these airports. We're creating some opportunities. We are looking into some business opportunities, and as an addition to this answer, I just want to add on what Jacob was talking about before. So I want to make it clear, in Galassi Airports, our starting point are not a growth in tourism, or actually a growth in anything. Our starting point is Greenland as it is today, with the travelers that we know today. We're just going to have a different structure on our traffic system. And starting from there, we can have a growth. But to make this growth a reality, we really much want to participate from Galassi Airports in making this happen. So we have natural business partners, one of them, of course, being Air Greenland, that we work very close with. But Air Greenland is a business, we're a business, so we have to also balance this. We also work very much with both, partly Naalakkersuisut, of course, but the metropolitans. And they have, all the metropolitans have their development plans for their cities, and the ones that the airports are being built in have I think, extraordinary planning for the next years ahead around the airport. So that's quite fantastic, because we need this infrastructure to become a success. But I think it's important for all of us to know that we can all participate in our part, but we have to do this together. Galassi Airport is not going to step up and drive this process in any way. We're building these airports. We're creating the frame, so to speak, but it's not for us to make this process a reality, so to say. Yeah.
What's your opinion on it, Christian? Because you definitely have your companies they must have some obstacles when they work with the municipalities, but also some advantages. So what's your point on it?
I think it's important to remember that just building infrastructure infrastructure doesn't necessarily start any kind of development. You need to build infrastructure to support a development that's in an upgoing curve. So with the decisions now made to build the airports, that's the right decision by the government. It will be very, very silly. It's like building a house and then not spending the last $10,000 on building the front door or putting a roof on it. So there are definitely some things that need to be put in place, and also some things that we find very, very unsexy to support these things. The sewer system, for instance, in a small town, if this town is going to have more tourists or more people visiting or more frequent visits, it's going to be a problem for the roads, the sewers, the housing, all sorts of little things. So we need to be ready to do the public investments necessary to support the businesses that are going to make money and prosper on top of the investment.
So you're basically saying tourists don't want to do it on a bucket.
I didn't say that, no. I said that if a town of 5,000 people all of a sudden has a population of 10,000 because of an influx of tourists, that's going to be a strain on the existing infrastructure. And what we can think of is the actual airport, and we can think of the hotels. We need to think of the housing for the staff, public transportation for staff, for tourists. We need to think of paths sideways, roads, size of roads, sewers, all sorts of little unsexy things that go with this. But these are a condition in order for the companies to actually make money of the investment, because we can have the world's best airport, but if we can't get people from the airport to the town because there's no road or there's no public bus system or no transfer system or whatever it could be. So we need to be very holistic about this. But that doesn't put the responsibility on the public system. They just need to keep investing to enable the rest of us to make money.
You have a comment, Jacob?
Yeah, and then again, I do think, and this is maybe going towards our politicians, that we do see some bottlenecks or some constraints. A good example is in Ilulissat, where expanding the city, making room for new hotels is limited by the water reservoir. And everyone wants to change this, but no one really knows whose responsibility is it. So we're all talking about it. Everyone wants to do something about it, but it just keeps going around in circles. We talked about this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and we're still talking about it. So, and that's where Iceland, they were clever, because they basically made a cross-departmental board across the government that could deal with all these issues: health, environment, infrastructure, business, finance. So we need to be a little bit quicker on our feet to make these things happen when we're talking working with the authorities on these things. Because everyone can agree, yeah, that's a good idea, and it is a prerequisite for the next step. So why are we not doing it? So sometimes we become our own worst enemy, really.
Okay.
I make an example, because one of the examples we like to use is there's a project for a hotel here in town. They're going to put in about 200 beds, and the hotel is going to require 60 employees, 60 people that we currently probably don't have. So we need to bring 60 people in to work at the hotel. That's a fair chance that a large percentage of these people will have families of 1, 2, 3 members. So maybe 150 people are moving to town. A third of those would most likely be children. So that's another 50 kids that need to go into our schools. Out of this population here, some of these people will need to go to the hospitals. They will need social services. They will also need to, I'm waving at the hospital up there. They would need to use the roads and all that, and it's not something we're thinking about. We just think, oh, that's lovely, another 200 tourists every night. Yeah, but, all these things that come with it, we need to do those calculations as well and be ready to invest in that and be prepared for that. Because if we can't provide schools, if we can't provide infrastructure and healthcare, we can't attract the employees, and then that hotel is just going to be a very nice little building sitting next to a runway somewhere in Greenland.
Very good point. I'm going to go over to questions from all you guys, and open up for anything you want. I will like you to stand up, say your name, ask a very short question, not a long talking thing. I will cut you off if you do that, and then address it to whoever you want to talk to here. I know there's one gentleman up there who's first, and I already have you on.
Yes, jeg hedder Jesper Skrød. Jeg er direktør for Activity Business. I'll do it in English. So my question is, you said you were tools, both Care and Air Greenland. So my question is, what kind of tool are you? Because what kind of products you guys make kind of have an impact on how it's going to be fitting together. For instance, one of the places that we see is science as something really moving forwards. Arctic Circle Trail is one of the most famous attractions to do in Greenland, but we don't have an offer for Arctic Circle Trails specifically, and we don't have offers for science, all that specifically. So my question is more to Jakob, how can we create products that actually fits to a market that we don't really make products for today?
Yeah, I think as an airline, we usually say that we'll fly anywhere where there's a market. And what creates the market? Well, the road is a tool. The Arctic Circle Road is a tool. But the luxury lodge in the middle of the Arctic Circle Trail with a great view and a great offering, that's the product. And the question is, should we build that product? We're an airline. Or should someone else build that product? Why you are nodding? Someone else? Yes. No. So, and the question is, I think this is where the entrepreneurial spirit or approach needs to be sort of brought in, because we've had this discussion many times in Greenland. We build an airport and then we'll prosper. We saw it with all the airports that were built in the 90s. It was like, now everything is going to prosper. So it's a very good question, but the road is a tool, the airline is a tool. We'll go anywhere where there's a market. But like I said, you can buy tickets from Ilulissat to Aasiaat. You can go to the website and look at the low price calendar, and you can get a ticket for 600 kroners, and you can get those all year round if you just want to plan 2 weeks ahead. So it is, it's actually a clear picture of what you're saying is Ilulissat is full, capacity is maxed out. You can do a 15-minute flight for 600 kroner, but people are not doing it. And that's the thinking that we have to get into. So who's going to make the products? Well, it's going to be many different people. Christian talked about some of the operators. Some are going to be big projects, probably made by investment funds or capital, private equity from abroad. Some is going to maybe be made from Air Greenland, like the Gapisislit Lodge here in Nuuk. The reason for making that project is, okay, if we can build 50 cabins and we can have an occupancy of 50% all year, well, then we can fill half an aircraft 2 times a week. So that supports the business model, right? But then we create the market. But it's a very good question. Who's gonna in the end offer the products?
Thank you.
No,
oh, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add because so from Galaxy Airports, we're also looking very seriously into this, and we're actually engaged with a global route development company called ASM to see what markets are favorable for Greenland and where should we try to create attention. And to create a new commercial route to an airport, it normally takes minimum 2 years. So that's why we're so interested in starting this work now. And we're, of course, looking the same places as Jakob also mentioned in his presentation earlier today. There's lots of potential in North America and in the hubs that we already have. But we have to have a backbone structure to sell. And for Galaxy Airports, it's very important that we have a common strategy. We're of course going to support that strategy. Now we talked a lot about tourism, but within tourism, what segment is it that we're trying to target? Because I think we all agree on that it's not mass tourism. But this all plays into this work that we do in Galaxy Airport and that Greenland are doing right now, preparing for competition and expanding their business. So we have to sit down together and have a strategy planning on what are the project and what is the backbone structure here in Greenland that we're selling and that we are offering also our citizens in the future within aviation transport.
Thank you. I think there was a question there.
Yes, hello. My name is Claus Iversen. I'm the co-owner of Islo Noan. and among other things, we own Hotel Aurora here in Nuuk. I'm really grateful for hearing all the energy for you guys, and you look like it seems like you want to really go forward with this. This is perfect and it's really good. The other day I was attending a citizen meeting regarding the airport, and we had the government there as well, and they foresee a rate of 2% increase in the passengers over the next many years. And I find that a bit disappointing, to be honest. 2% is not very much. And if you only foresee 2% of increase in passengers over the next many years, I could be a bit afraid of the investments from the government, etc. If you have to build a new quay in Abilene Dock to get passengers safe in, or you have to find space for me to build a new hotel here in Nuuk, I don't see 2% is enough to make the government motivated to make these investments. So how do you see it? How do you see the rate in the passengers, how it will rise? And do you think the government are aware of the possibilities of what's possible? And I know it has to be sustainable. Of course, it has to be sustainable. But I'm sure we can do better than 2% and still make it sustainable. Thank you.
Is it for the whole panel or for?
Yeah, mostly maybe for Christian, but the panel can answer, of course.
Thank you.
Do you want to start? Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. I think the 2% comes out of sort of a conservative approach to a business case, so I think actually the 2% is very clever. Because if you had to meet 15% to make it work, not good. So I think the 2%, forget about that. That's actually just a clever way of making sure that we're mitigating risk in the projects. I think that the rate can be higher than 2%. I mean, we're working with more than 2%. Definitely the potential for 5 or 10% is definitely there. So I think forget about the 2% and yeah.
Yeah, and I agree, because 2% was, there were two business cases. There was one for the government and one for the investment market. And I'm not going to tell you which one is which, but real life is that we're seeing growth rates of 3 to 5% per year in the current market. And I like to say that we can predict, and there are things that we think we can see. Something's going to happen that we were not seeing. None of us have the crystal ball. Something's going to happen that we weren't expecting. And I think, yes, we are conservative at the moment. I wouldn't worry too much. But I get the case. You need to present something to investors. And yeah. Yeah, for those of you that can't hear the question, Klaus is asking, is the government ready to do the relevant investments in order to build and grow? And I think that's a very good question. I think we should consider bringing that in this afternoon.
Definitely consider bringing that into to the mayors. They are the ones that should answer that question. So I think if there's anybody who doesn't agree, I think that will be one of the questions we will bring to the mayors.
But we'd also like to see the municipalities come up with a plan, and say this area is for tourism. This is the kind of tourism we want, and why should we wait so many years to get a lot in the fjord to build a cabin or a cabin town? If it was in the plans from the beginning, it's just a matter of who bids for the lot, and then we can get going.
If I can just add to that, Christian, I think, so the numbers you're mentioning, I agree. I think that's part of a quite conservative business plan made to finance the airports, and I also think that's a smart move. But if we look to the Faroe Islands and the expansion of Vagar Airport some years ago, and them getting one more airline operator in, and if you look at the growth rate there, I think the airport itself, they had a growth rate of 10% per year in their increase in passengers, and of course we're hoping to see numbers here in Greenland. as well in that rate. But what we are here to talk about today and what is so important is that we have to come together here and make everything happen. Because as you very well pointed out, here in our capital, the city is quite stressed right now with construction, and we need more if these things are going to happen. Therefore, I also think it's very interesting what they did in the Faroe Islands to make this a success, and just to look at the journey that they went through. Because actually what happened in the beginning was that their hotel capacity was very low, and it technically still is, but there was just a lot of Airbnb, and there was a lot of willingness in the population to participate in this and step in. As we also heard here today, we need here in Greenland this common goal if we really want if we look at the tourism segment. From Galassi Airports, we just also really want a lot of more leisure travel, cheaper tickets, more business travel and so forth. But in the end, it means more people staying at your hotel, and it means more capacity in all our cities here in Greenland.
Thank you. I think we'll go to the next question, unless you, the gentleman up there.
Martin Larsen from EP Consult Energies. My question is related to making a showcase for renewables and sustainability. There's a lot of passion, and you guys have a lot of vision and a huge challenge ahead of you. But it all sounds fantastic, and I'm just thinking, when I listen to all this, that your tourism industry will probably be powered mostly of people who wants to have a beautiful experience in beautiful nature. And that is a big tick. They will get that. So how do we attract and how do we progress this? So if in all this development that you still have to do, all this work you still have to do, try to have a very strong strategy for renewables and sustainability, I think that's an additional thing you can add on to natural beauty. So if you can showcase in your future marketing materials that your hotels have been built considering sustainability and renewable energies and fantastic materials that comes from low carbon footprint materials, etc., etc. All I'm trying to say, I think you have an opportunity, because it's still so new, to actually be a showcase for the world. Come to Greenland, not only for natural beauty, but to see how we build a natural environment with sustainable materials in a green environment. So I don't know how much you've thought about that, but I think you have a huge opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. We like to put it like this, come for the nature, stay for the culture. It makes sense because Greenland is definitely an attractive place in terms of nature. But we're also seeing in tourism at the moment, we're seeing more and more demand for these carefree holidays where you're not leaving behind any sort of footprint. That's one thing we're seeing. Another thing we're seeing is investments. I foresee that in 5 years' time, you cannot get an investment anywhere in the world if you can't, with your project, prove that you're actually helping lowering the CO2 emissions. You have to support the aims and the goals of the Paris Agreement in your investment. So it's going to be harder and harder to finance anything that doesn't support sustainability and renewable energy. And that's one thing. Another piece of work that we're doing is trying to get our governments to understand that we can't think in different blocks. We can't just say we want sustainable tourism and not think about what's happening in the fisheries. Because if our fisheries isn't sustainable and we're serving fish from that industry to the tourists, that's going to mess up the whole thing for the tourists. Also, if they take a walk in the hinterland behind us and there's trash lying all around, and you're walking up to your knees in garbage, that doesn't work either. So we need to address these things across the different sectors. And I think we as Greenland have something still to both discover and to plan for when it comes to this.
Thank you. I think it's the young gentleman from Sisimiut.
Yes. So I don't think I got through clear enough. So I'll put my question a bit differently. You said earlier in your presentation, Jacob, that you expected 4% fewer customers traveling within Greenland. And we have seen estimates for around 3 flights to Sisimiut a week, to 5 or something. It's definitely something that will go lower than there is today, and the same for Ganflustor. And I think my question is, how can we make sure that it's not just Nuuk and Ilulissat where we're actually building airports that will benefit from this? We need to be able to move people away from Nuuk and Ilulissat as well, if this has to be something that's successful, as Christian pointed out earlier. We need to get them out. But if we lower the frequency now, where we already are having good products, and we are getting we are getting people who want to come. But if we lower it, it's going to be much more difficult. So again, how can we solve this? Would it be with something like a longer airport in Sisimiut and maybe Manitou or Asiat and bigger airplanes? So we might not be able to have the same number of frequency, but we will be able to have more passengers. Or how can we move forward in this as somebody who's out in the coast and not in the cities where we are building the airports? How can we get you guys to be the right tool for us?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and this is the balance I was talking about earlier between providing critical infrastructure and running a commercial business. We have different tools. If we have a route to Sisimiut in the future, if of course price is one factor. We're flying a type of aircraft that burns a certain amount of fuel. We have an airport that needs a fire truck and people working there, so there is sort of a base cost that you can't really do anything about, and we have to make money. So if we can't make money on that route, and we can't get more people to go there, then we can only increase the price, we can reduce the frequencies, or we can go to our government and say, what do you think is the minimum level of service that is needed here? If we compare, I think this is very interesting. If you compare Greenland to northern Norway, we operate the same type of aircraft, the Dash 8s, same type of runways, same type of environment, so it's very, very similar. It's directly comparable. The difference is that in northern Norway, they have more passengers, shorter flight times, but the government pays 70% of the tickets. That's why they have so much tourism in northern Norway. In Greenland, you guys pay the 100% of the tickets, and that's why I say it's not expensive to fly in Greenland, it's just a lot of money. So when we compare to what they do in other parts of the world, this is one tool. We have estimates saying that a tourist spends on average 15,000 kroner in Greenland. Well, if that requires call it a subsidy of 1,000 or 2,000 kroner, it's still a good investment to get people to go to these places, especially if Ilulissat is maxed out, Nuuk is maxed out of capacity. We want people to go to Bamut or Manitou or Sisimiut. So that is one tool, but this is a discussion for all of us. It's not just pointing to Air Greenland and saying, how can you make more people go to Sisimiut? Because that's exactly the mistake we made back in the 90s with the new airports. We flew 4 times a week to Bamut with the helicopter with 25 seats. The airport opened, we flew 2 times a week with the Dash 7 with 50 seats. Because the demand was the same. It was much cheaper operation, so society saved a lot of money because we could do it without subsidies. But it didn't really help the demand or bring in more passengers. So this is a common discussion that we need to have in Greenland. That's why I'm saying it. I can't solve it, I'm sorry. But I'm glad you asked the question, because this is our reality. And I have our commercial people sitting up here, and they're smiling, because this is very, very difficult task.
But if I just may add to that, Jacob, I think, of course, for Jacob and somehow also for us, it all comes down to the numbers of passengers. But if we hang on to Sisimiut, it's a great destination. It has so much to offer, and it has to, of course, be part of a bigger package. So if we can get the passenger numbers up, and Jacob, he can fly a Dash 8 there only half full, and it can still be a break even for him. I mean, it might be possible, and this is why it's so important to make this common strategy. So there needs to be operations in and out of Sisimiut every day of the week, at least in the summer season or whatever, for making the initiatives there go around and people keep interest in it, and the people traveling to Greenland to especially go to Sisimiut to make that end goal. This is possible. We just have to make this plan together, and I think the talks that we have with Greenland and in this forum, Airport 2.0, where Naalakkersuisut and the metropolitans also participate. It's all about making a bigger cake for everybody. It's not about my customers or Jacob's customers or Visit Greenland's customers or however. It's how to make a bigger cake for the whole of Greenland, for all of us to benefit from. And this is what these airports will be part of an opportunity of. But we have to make a common strategy together.
Yeah, I would just like to reply to that, and because lower frequency, more expensive tickets doesn't sound something that's going to be easy to create development for our region. So how can we as a region help you understand what demand there is from outside? Because if we just get out and say, well, there's lower frequency because this is what we can see now, but it's a new airport structure. We need to look at what is the possibilities out there and what is the interest out there. And we are in contact with other people, and we do get questions about the future and how to get to Greenland in the future. But when we talk the only feedback we can give them is lower frequency, higher tickets. And that's not something that sounds sexy for them.
No, and that's also the worst case scenario. And I don't think this will be the scenario for Sisimiut necessarily, because like Aviaya says, it's a great destination. It's a great both winter and summer destination. And I think one of the things that will happen with Sisimiut is today the passenger flows to Sisimiut are actually split between domestic passengers going from Nuuk to Sisimiut, and then you have the international passengers going via Kangerlussuaq. You can go to Sisimiut from Nuuk in 4 different ways today. In the future, that will be consolidated into one solid route, and we've discussed this before, where I say, so actually there is a basis for Sisimiut to have more frequencies, or at least have higher volumes or higher load factors, then prices can go down. So I think there are some possibilities. Another possibility is you can actually sail to Sisimiut in the wintertime, if you have an ice-class ship anyway, and the possibility of attracting some of the cruise lines to stay in Greenland over the winter and do runs between South Greenland and Sisimiut, where you can sail one way, fly the other way around. That's another possibility, which is very attractive. So that is some of the thinking that we need to do together. And there are lots of possibilities. Bo will need to buy more snowmobiles and more fat bikes.
Yes, but do you want a headset or something?
No, just the last one. The Kangerlussuaq is the big question mark for us within our region, because there is good. It sounds good for Sisimiut, and we had that talk. But what about Kangerlussuaq? That is still a bigger question mark, and that's also a bit to care, because what is the future of Kangerlussuaq as an airport? How is it going to be run? Who is going to run it? And how is the frequency going to be? Because it doesn't have the same conditions as Sisimiut. Thank you.
I guess that's a question for me as well. Well, it's a big question mark for us as well. But I think we're pretty sure that Kangerlussuaq will be there in the future too, because the military needs it. It looks like it. We don't know if we can use it as an alternate airport or as a civilian airport. I think so. I think what will happen is that there will still be airport staff, tourism, military personnel that needs to go in and out of Kangerlussuaq, and it's right on the way to Ilulissat. So it would be fairly easy for Greenland to, with the Dash 8, to stop in Kangerlussuaq on the way to Ilulissat or on the way to Sisimiut a couple of times a week. I mean, it's not that complicated. So will there be an Airbus 330 coming into Kangerlussuaq every day of the week? No, I don't think so. Then you need to build a lot of lodges, but maybe in the future, who knows? So I think Kangerlussuaq will still have a service. It won't be the same service as today, but it will be accessible.
But I think it's worth making the point also because you're a tourist destination and you need to think of a new marketing strategy for Kangerlussuaq because today, you get all these people that go through there. Some use it as a destination, but a lot of people, they stop over for a couple of days. You have to think about Kangerlussuaq differently in the future. It's an end destination. It's somewhere you travel to, and it's going to put a strain on your marketing budget, but it's a way to go, definitely. And it's still a destination worth visiting because of all the investments made in there.
Yeah, and I think, and this is not to neglect the responsibility that Air Greenland has, but people go to Ittoqqortoormiit on the east coast. People go to Qaanaaq and pay a lot of money to experience dog sledding and the culture and everything. And for the tourists who go to Qaanaaq, that's a very, very long, very, very difficult route of travel, and it's very, very expensive. But they do it. This year we've never seen so many tourists actually going to Qaanaaq, which is exactly what you're saying. It's marketing the destination the right way, then people will pay, and then it's not so much are we doing 3 or 5 times a week, or is it 1,000 kroner or 800? Greenland will never be a high volume, low yield market, never ever. So I think we have to think more in terms of increasing the value of the products, and I think I said it in another presentation, we would rather have one tourist paying 10,000 than 10 tourists paying 1,000. Yeah.
I know there's one question over there. Any other who has questions? I'll put you on the note. And
this is more of a comment than a question.
Why am I not surprised?
Please turn off the microphone for this guy.
Kangerlussuaq is not just a hub or a destination that people passes through. Kangerlussuaq has tourist operators that has an annual turnover of 75 million kroners a year. And that's a fact. And that's just not something that you're going to move out on the coastline. So, yeah.
I think that supports the comment that there's so many investments made in there. You need to protect those through a marketing strategy, but it's a different marketing strategy than you have today.
There's still going to be a demand for Kangerlussuaq,
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think, like Christian is saying, Kangerlussuaq and Narsarsuaq, when in the future, when they are less accessible, they actually have the possibility of becoming more desirable in a way.
Kangerlussuaq is also the spot for where the most research is happening. The most research glacier is in Kangerlussuaq. But, the airport in Nuuk is opening in about 2 years' time. Imagine going into next year and being a tour operator, not being able to answer what's the frequency going to be for Kangerlussuaq. So, there are some serious questions about being able to plan at least more than 1 year ahead. So, we need to be able to figure something out.
I think there will soon be an announcement on what's going to happen with Kangerlussuaq, and then people can start to plan. I don't know what it's going to be, but
that's a question basically for the government. There's none of these people up here who can answer that. They definitely have an opinion on it, but they have no chance in the world of answering that question. So I think that could be another question for the politicians. Why are there not a plan if you want to keep something in Kangerlussuaq and in Narsarsuaq? Is it me or is it you? Sorry about that. We need to maybe ask the politicians about that, because they are the ones finally taking the decision on what do we want to happen for this place, and then you could start developing them with a new marketing strategy or whatever you want to do it. But I understand that you guys are in limbo, but there are none here who can answer that question. For you.
Thank you. My name is Melina, and I work at the Premier's office. I guess this question goes to all of you three. I just want to hear your opinion on, we're speaking of new runways and the future of Greenland and so on and so forth. Would you believe that the new runways will make a paved way towards independence of Greenland?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the building blocks, for sure, to a more self-sustaining economy, as we talked about yesterday. And a self-sustaining economy is a prerequisite for independence. So it's definitely an important building block. And I think infrastructure investments, usually they're very expensive when you decide on them. And when you look back in 30 years, everyone will say, oh, that was a great decision made 30 years ago. I remember when the hydroelectric plant here in Nuuk was being built in the late 80s. I think it opened in 1990. So much public opinion against it at the time. Oh, it's a too big project. Greenland's going to go bankrupt. All the reindeer are going to die. The fish are going to taste bad. You know, a lot of actually public opinion against it. And today, everyone, I think, agrees that that was one of the best investments ever made. And I think the airports, it's going to be difficult in the beginning, but I think in 2050, everyone's going to look back and say, "Oh, that was a great decision." So yeah.
Yeah, I can build on that, Jacob, if I may, because it's a somewhat difficult question, but I think economic independence, yes, this is a building stone for this, and this is a vast investment from the government of Greenland. This is the biggest projects that we have ever built. So of course there are big expectations that these projects will open doors for many new opportunities, and I think they will, and they will improve the possibility to make growth in various segments in Greenland. There's so much talk about tourism today, but of course also fish export in general, cargo in general for Greenland. These airports are going to create new possibilities, and I think there's going to be a great interest in it. So definitely.
Yeah, and not to spoil the fun, but to become economically independent, we would need to replace a block grant of, say, 5 billion Danish kroners, and I think I used the example yesterday. That's about another 16 Royal Greenlands in terms of their results, profits every year. So if we use the airports right to build more, make more money, it's definitely a stepping stone. But it could also go the other way, because I was actually at Bamjø Airport when we opened it December 1st, 2007, and everybody was so disappointed when they saw the schedule and what happened down there, because we didn't manage to use the airport in the right way. We just made it a lot easier for people to move out of Bamjø. So the runway sort of became the exit rather than the entrance to the town. So it's not a yes or no, it depends. If we do all the right things and use this very nice gift that we've been given now of an investment in an infrastructure, in an economy that's on an up, yes, then that could support any kind of plans that Greenland may have for the future.
Thank you. I think we have one more question.
Yes.
And I'm still open for questions, so please put your hand up if you have.
This is more a remark. The gentleman talked about renewables in the investments. And this conference has been much about sustainability and about partnerships. And I just wanted to say to the foreign guests we have here in Gatwick that the latest hotel built here has been built in wood. Only the foundation is in concrete. We have put a lot of thought into that. And it's very easy making new investments, so we can make it the right way from the start here in Greenland. And of course also we will have an earth check on the hotel. So just saying we're not a third world country regarding sustainability and renewables. I think actually we are in front here in Greenland. So just a remark from my point, from my side. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're of course welcome to comment.
Yeah.
I think you've got a point that a lot of people are actually expecting us to be at the forefront of this. I think a lot of people are expecting us to be at the front of the climate agenda and renewable energy because of our position, because of the history of Greenland and the changes. Yeah.
Any more questions? Then I'll have to find my paper and get a little bit for you. I think we're going to end the session with, I'm going to ask you the question that, regarding to this project. Let's imagine it's Christmas Eve. What's the biggest gift you could get, Jacob?
For Christmas Eve?
Yeah, not personally, but for this
I was going to say a new snowmobile.
I know what you personally would like, but that's a thing between you and your wife.
Okay, the greatest gift that I would have would be a national tourism strategy where all stakeholders are at the table working together, making a strategy where everyone pitches in and agrees on this is what we need to do. So it's both the government, it's the municipalities, it's the tour operators, it's Galactic Airports, Visit Greenland, Air Greenland, the big infrastructure, where everyone basically agrees on, okay, this is the national plan for Greenland, and we look 10, 20, 30 years ahead. And we all agree, okay, that's the direction, this is what needs to be done, and then we can all pull in the same direction, and we're all in agreement on, okay, yeah, this is when we turn right, and this is when we turn left, and we do it together. So I think that would be, and a new snowmobile.
And you, the same, or?
No, I don't do that anymore. No, I wanted to say that for me, really these new airports, this huge investment from the government of Greenland and partly the government of Denmark, they're built to bring Greenland closer together, to make Kommunikuyasel stronger, to make the region prosper, to make the Disco Bay area prosper, to make Nuuk area prosper, all of Greenland. And I think it's so important that we keep up this good work that we heard a lot of today, and that we keep talking together and make this strong strategy that Jacob is talking about, because this can really be something prosperous for all of Greenland, and I think it should be. And I hope it will make all of Greenland become stronger as one, and not make the ditches between the regions become deeper, because that's not the point. This creates an opportunity where it can be a good thing for all of us. This could be the greatest thing for Sisimiut and Garðlussuaq, fantastic destinations. We just have to have a common strategy and get as many on board as we can before the reality sets in and the planes are actually landing. So that would be my wish. It's not, can you, thank you.
Yeah, well, hope Santa comes with that, but I think both of them are very nice wishes, and I think they are very necessary wishes for this project to be a success. And
yeah,
Santa came knocking at your door.
Yeah, peace on earth, and by that is just a term to elaborate on what's been said. Because what we've seen today, if I come to Greenland as a tourist and I go into my hotel, let's say I'm in Ilulissat, and I said I had a wonderful week here, I did all these good things, and I asked the receptionist, where should I go next time? And where should I go next time in Greenland? And the answer would often be, well, you don't go to Sisimiut because that and that. Don't go to Nuuk because that. Come back to Ilulissat. And I'm thinking, well, I've just done Ilulissat. Okay, I'm not coming back to Greenland. I would love for the receptionist to say, oh, wow, yeah, you had a good time here. Then you now need to go and see Qaqortoq in the south. And when I go to Qaqortoq the next year, I ask at the reception, and they say, oh, you should go see Tasiilaq, and so on and so on. And all of a sudden, I've done 4 or 5 trips in my lifetime to Greenland. So translate that into what do I want? I want us to be good at marketing, first of all, Greenland. Secondary, the regions. Then the towns. Then the streets. Then the hotel. Then the things. So that we become not competitors, but work together in selling the whole destination. Because I think that's one of the means to getting to the thought that Sisimiut and Bamut and all the other towns should benefit from these airport investments. But currently, we're seeing something different. So, peace on earth.
So, to sum up all of these, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, and sorry, I haven't been here all the time, so if I'm mistaken, please stop me in a second. But in an hour, there'll be 5 mayors sitting in those seats, and there will be another chair, I hope. So, if you haven't at this stage considered that opportunity, I urge you to do it now, because you have to deliver 2 questions to the mayors.
Yeah, and we are ready for that.
Did you discuss that already? I see. Sorry for my interruption.
We have a question for basically on are all these municipalities going to be ready for? What are they doing? For infrastructure, getting that ready? Are the sewer system ready? Are the water lines? Are the town plannings ready? And how do we make this all of Greenland's project? So come again, Martin, next time.
But did you have a question, by the way?
We do our homework here. These are the good people in here. Any other questions for the panel?
Today there's another airline that flies into Greenland, Icelandair. What will happen if they start flying into Kangerlussuaq? Will you start bothering them and mistreat them or what?
Icelandair actually did start flights to Kangerlussuaq a couple of years ago, but they suspended the flights again. And we have a good relationship with Icelandair. We help each other out when we break down in Iceland. Their mechanics fix our aircraft. When they break down here, we fix their aircraft. And of course, we're competitors, but we're also in a part of the world where we help each other out. And they did actually do start flights to Kangerlussuaq. So, and that's just the marketplace. That's just how it is.
I know. Okay, thank you.
Any last questions?
Hi, Ed West, Vectrus. I have a question real quick, because I had heard earlier there was like a 2% growth assessment. I don't know what that was, but everyone seemed to dismiss it and say, it's more than this. But, you know, my understanding would be you'd have some type of universal growth assessment or something for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years for Greenland. And then, and only then, really, industry would come and do a business case and say, well, this makes sense in here in Ilulissat or Kangerlussuaq or wherever we're going to look at. But it kind of sounded like during this session it was, well, you know, and with Christian with the GBA, well, industry can also get involved and we can solve problems and we can do things. But that seems to be maybe reverse of what I think would happen. So I guess the question is, and I'm still learning, right? So is there some type of assessment that's good to use for everyone and for people to come in and understand what does Greenland think Greenland is going to look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
We agreed upon easy. So the question is, what can we use the runway infrastructure for in terms of building scenarios for the future? Is that what you're sort of asking, or what will it look like?
Sure. I mean, really, from a macro perspective, if you're trying to understand how to invest in Greenland and how to be part of the solution and solve the community problems, where do you look at? Where is the roadmap? So we can say, oh, well, I provide these services, and I can do this, and I can build a hut, or I can do whatever, you know?
That's on my Christmas wish list.
Yeah. There's no roadmap. I think that's a fair assessment, and I think that's one of the questions we'll be asking also the municipalities. You know, how are you planning the towns? How are you planning your regions in terms of development within tourism, for instance? Where do you want to build industry? Because currently there is no public plan. You know, if we knew that this lot was for a new fish factory and this lot was for a new hotel, and we will be preparing these lots for buildings within the next few years, on top of that, we could grow our ideas. Currently, we don't have that roadmap. We don't have these plans, and it's a huge stress factor for industry. You know, I'm just looking at the hotel here, and he'll nod right away. Yeah, it's a fact. Yeah, I don't know. I was going to say something nice, but I agree with Jakob. It's on the wish list, definitely. Yeah.
Hej, jeg hedder Lars Søder. I forhold til den her ønskeliste her, så tænker jeg bare, det er fint at have det på ønskeliste, men hvad vil GE gøre for, at der bliver samlet det her råd blandt de ledende magter i Grønland for at forberede os? Så det er fint at have det på ønskelisten, men ikke nødvendigvis GE, men det kan også være et spørgsmål til borgmesteren, eller de forskellige borgmester. Hvad gør vi for at samle det her? Det kan være et ønske, men hvad gør vi?
Yeah, it's a good question. What can we do to get people together around the table? I think that where I started today is I think often if we get the politicians together with industry, we'll have people pointing at the politicians, sort of, sitting back. We need you to do this, this, and that. I think we need to do the sort of the two lists. What can we do as an industry, and what can we demand of our public system? Make it very tangible. I say these are the requirements for us to prosper, but we're not going to sit back and wait for the municipalities, for instance, to come up with their plan. These are the things that we're going to work on. And I would say that's sort of also the outcome of this, this conference here. Moving forward, being more specific in terms of the airports, we're going to do some industry sessions all along the coast where we're going to get industries together, not necessarily involved in tourism, and talk from an industry perspective. We're not going to have the government or the municipalities there per se, and just talk about what we need to do and what we can do. I think dialogue, but it's such a free word to use in this context. But we need to start somewhere, and we need to do something that we haven't done before, because none of us are probably big enough to lift this assignment ourselves, and we need to approach it in a new way. And I definitely like the idea of bringing industries together and see what kind of partnerships that will come out of that, because we've got a little experience with it, but we've got good experience with it.
Yeah, if I might add to that, Christian. So I think, the truth is that there is no master plan right now, and that's what it's all about. But there's a lot of different things going on. But this task is bigger than anyone sitting here. We have to come together, and an example of this could be power planning in Greenland. So it's a publicly run utility, and if we want these. Maybe to begin with the cities where we're building the airport, but potentially more cities to expand and to prosper in this, this plan has to be part of this. And this is not something the metropolitans can address on their own. This is a national company that is run by the government of Greenland, so they have to step into this planning. So I think there are a lot of great initiatives, and I think we also heard that from the morning's presentation. And that's a good thing. We just have to pull together now and really make all of this good talk also today become reality, for there to be a plan and a strategy when we start to fly big planes into our major cities here in a not far away distant future. Yeah.
You had a comment, Christian?
Yeah, I did, because Martin left again, so now we can talk about our second question. And it would be a good question to ask, actually. What would the municipalities, what would they require from industry? What would they be expecting from us? What would they be expecting to do, and what are they expecting us to do? And our demand, obviously, is for the right framework. But I think flipping it around and asking them, ask not what we can do for you, but what you can do for us, and vice versa.
My wish, if I can repeat it, yes, my wish is that all the stakeholders, get together and make a national strategy together. And we won't agree on everything, but we will have something that will be the guiding compass for the future for all of us, because we're also a small country, or big country, small population, and there will be some things that we can do and some things that we can't do. And if we all agree on which things to do and which things not to do, then it makes things easier, and it will also make it easier for the investors, like you were saying from Vectors, and understanding, okay, so this is actually what's going to happen, and then you can see yourself in that puzzle.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. So you get together, because I think what tends to happen up here is that we work in different areas in our country, in business or in politics, but if we come together and create the stable platform that we all really need, both in politics and in business, I think I totally agree with you. But I really think we need to hear what is the next step, and have someone say that we have to. I don't think the right way is to. Of course, business also have to organize, but who takes the next step to create this networking group, or whatever you want to call it? That's something I think would be a great question.
Any So I think we can pretty much agree that we're going to ask them, are they preparing for it? What are they doing to prepare for it? And what are their wish lists for us as business to do? So then we have our 2 questions. Are there any more questions for the panel? Because then I will close down and let you go out and have a cup of coffee.
I'd rather, in the last question, rather than a wish list, which is too open for me, I'd rather say, what are your expectations, to see how do we divide responsibilities, because I'd like to ask that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's just me, and it's not Christmas.
So I'll say thank you to the panel. Thank you for your insight and very good discussion. Thank you to all of you guys, and let's give everybody a hand.